let's jump straight into Serie A, shall we? And there's a match this weekend, Udinese at home to Milan, that might not seem like a huge deal on paper, 10th against 9th, but there's actually a lot more to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. If you remember back to when these two sides met last in Udine, a Saturday night back in January last year, it became a big story for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that was the match where Milan's goalkeeper, Mike Maignan, was subjected to some really awful racist abuse. 4 individuals in the Udinese Curva. That section of the stadium where the most passionate fans are, well, unfortunately in this case, the most bigoted, targeted him with some truly horrific chants, monkey noises, that disgusting slur starting with N. Just a shameful episode.
Yeah, it really was. And thankfully, there was some swift action afterwards. The local police commissioner, Alfredo D'Agostino, he issued 5-year stadium bans, those DASPO bans, which basically prohibit people from attending sporting events. And those are the maximum bans you can give for first-time offenders.
And Udinese themselves took action as well. They identified these individuals through their surveillance system at the Stadium Blue Energy Stadium and banned them for life from the ground. So you'd hope that would send a strong message.
Yeah, you really would. But then there was another disturbing element to the whole thing. When the game eventually resumed after the stoppage, a big section of the Udine crowd, they actually booed Maignan when he came back on the pitch. And that just suggests a really troubling level of support, or at least tolerance, for what those guys had done over the actual victim. It makes you wonder about some of the attitudes there.
It really does. And sadly, it seems like the atmosphere for Maignan in Udine hasn't exactly improved in the months since then. There have been reports of more unwelcome messages aimed at him. So, this weekend's match carries a lot of extra weight with it.
It really does. And it raises some big questions about how effective these bans can be and about, the deeper cultural issues that might be at play here. But for now, why don't we shift gears a little bit? Today is Friday, the 11th of April. So a lot going on in Italian football as we head into the weekend.
Let's get some of the European action from midweek.
Yeah.
How about that Bodø Glimt performance against Lazio up in Norway? They really put on a show.
Yeah, they did. They were playing up at their Esmira Stadium up in the Arctic Circle, so not the easiest conditions for a Roman team near freezing temperatures and strong winds.
Yeah, tough conditions. But Lazio seemed to be coping okay. At first, their keeper, Mandos, made a vital save early on, and then Marusic had a good chance with a header. So that maybe they weather the storm and come away with a decent result.
Yeah, me too. But then things really changed in the second half. Bodø Glimt created so many clear-cut chances, at least 5 I can think of off the top of my head. And honestly, if it wasn't for Mendes in goal for Lazio, we could have been looking at a record defeat, maybe even up there with that 6-1 Roma loss a few years back.
Absolutely. Could have been a real hammering. And what's interesting is that the guy who scored both of Bodø Glimt's goals, Ulrik Saltnes, hadn't actually scored a single goal in European competition all season before this match. And another name to mention is Ian Petter Hauge, who Milan fans might remember. He actually signed for them after playing against them for Bodø Glimt in the Europa League a few years ago. So kind of full circle for him.
Yeah, that's right. It is interesting how these things come around. So, look, I know it's tempting to say that Lazio maybe had one eye on the Rome derby coming up, but I think there was more to it than that, don't you?
Yeah, I think so, too. It seemed like Coach Baroni maybe set them up to be a bit too cautious, prioritize limiting the damage in those difficult conditions. Yeah. But that seemed to stifle their creativity going forward. And the absence of Rovella in midfield, who was suspended for this one, that really hurt them as well. They just couldn't seem to control the game. And, as the match went on, key attackers like Pedro Isaacs and Sakani, they just seemed to fade away.
Yeah, you're right. And then that second goal from Saltnes, about 20 minutes from the end, that really sealed it. I think Mendes was maybe a little bit out of position for that one, and the shot wasn't the most powerful, but it was well placed. And honestly, Bodø Glimt could have scored even more. They were so organized going forward, created so many chances. They might even be a little disappointed not to have been more clinical.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. So looking ahead to the second leg in Rome on Thursday night, well, obviously, the climate will be very different down in Italy, and the atmosphere will be electric as well, especially with the Rome Derby coming up just a few days later. So this is a massive game for Lazio. Could really shape their whole season.
Absolutely. Pivotal match for them now. How about Fiorentina over in Slovenia? They had a slightly more straightforward evening against Celje, winning 2-1 in front of a decent crowd.
Yeah, good result for them. And some pretty memorable goals, too. That first one from Fiorentina's captain, Luca Ranieri, in the first half, that was something else. He went on this mazy run, beat a defender, won a challenge, and then instead of crossing, he just unleashed this rocket of a shot at the near post, and somehow it went in. Sometimes those moments of individual brilliance can change a game.
Yeah, that was a great goal. And then Rolando Mandragora scored the second from the penalty spot after he was fouled in the box. VAR checked it and gave the penalty. And actually, that appearance for Mandragora was a new record for him, most European appearances for Fiorentina.
Oh, wow. Didn't realize that. And Celje did manage to pull a goal back through a penalty of their own. Pongracic gave that one away, and they actually came close to equalizing as well. But Fiorentina's goalkeeper pulled off a couple of big saves to keep him in front.
Yeah, he did some great stops, and I'm sure a lot of people listening will recognize the name Davide De Gea. It's interesting to see these experienced guys, still performing at a high level.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of goalkeepers, there was a little bit of talk elsewhere about Onana at Manchester United struggling a bit in the Europa League. So, it just goes to show how important it is to have a reliable presence between the posts like Fiorentina had with De Gea.
Absolutely. So, all in all, a good night for Fiorentina's coach, Vincenzo Italiano. He was able to rest a couple of key players like Keenan and Goodmanson, and he also gave Fagioli a run out in the second half. So, with that big match against Parma coming up on Sunday, clearly have one eye on that. And of course, with the Champions League spots up for grabs in Serie A this season, that Parma game is even more important now.
Right. Huge game for them. And looking ahead in the Conference League, it looks like Fiorentina are probably going to face Real Betis in semis after Betis beat the Polish side, Jagiellonia. So, the quality of opposition definitely stepping up now.
For sure. For sure. Well, let's get back to Serie A. And I guess the big story this weekend, apart from that Udinese-Milan match, has got to be the title race. Inter Milan and Napoli still battling it out at the top, and their games are spread out over 48 hours this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Inter are home to Cagliari on Saturday afternoon, and it'll be interesting to see if Simone Inzaghi rotates his squad a bit, with the Champions League to think about as well. We could see some guys like Arnautovic, Correa, Bissek, Fortessi, De Vries, maybe even DeMarco or Zaleski getting a run out.
Yeah, it's tricky. Inter have looked so dominant in Serie A for a while now, but there have been a few moments in recent matches, especially after they've made substitutions, where it's looked like they've maybe eased off a little bit, almost subconsciously thinking about the Champions League. So, Inzaghi's got to find that balance.
For sure. And Cagliari might be down towards the bottom of the table, but they've shown they can be dangerous going forward, especially with a player like Yuri Mina up front. He can be a relief handful.
Yeah, he's a threat for sure. And then Napoli, they've got Empoli at home on Monday night. Empoli are on a really long winless run at the moment. So on paper, it looks like a pretty comfortable win for the champions.
Yeah, you'd think so. But we shouldn't forget that Empoli have upset Napoli before, especially when there's a Scudetto on the line. They did it just a few years ago. So never say never. And Napoli are missing a couple of key players for this one. Di Lorenzo and Anguissa are both suspended. So their coach, Luciano Spalletti, will be hoping that Buongiorno can recover from his injury in time. He missed the Bologna game last week.
Yeah, fingers crossed for him. And speaking of Bologna, they've been one of the surprise packages of the season, haven't they? They're right up there challenging for a Champions League place, and they've got a huge game against Atalanta this weekend, direct clash for third place. So high stakes for both teams.
Yeah, big game. And Atalanta have actually been a little bit out of sorts lately. They've lost a bit of form, and they're missing the Kettleary through injury. So could be a good time for Bologna to play them, although Bologna do have some injury problems of their own. Ferguson and Skrupski are both out, but they seem to have this amazing team spirit, this ability to overcome adversity. So should be a cracking match.
Yeah, looking forward to that one. And then elsewhere, Juventus are at home to Lecce, which should be a straightforward win for them. And down at the bottom, Venezia, they desperately need a win against Monza if they're going to have any chance of staying up. And, of course, there's the Rome Derby, always unpredictable. And we've also got Verona against Genoa and Como against Torino rounding off the weekend.
So a mixed bag for the Italian teams in Europe this week. Glimt putting on a show against Lazio.
Yeah.
But Fiorentina grinding out a win in Slovenia.
Yeah. And of course, that Udinese-Milan match has a lot more writing on it than just the points. Given what happened last time they met with the racist abuse derided at Maignan, it really makes you think about how far we've come, or maybe how far we haven't come in tackling this issue in football.
Absolutely. And in terms of the Serie A title race, well, those matches at the top of the table are going to be crucial. Atalanta against Bologna. And, of course, the Rome Derby.
Yeah.
They could have a huge impact on how the season finishes.
No doubt about it. So I guess the question for everyone listening is this, we've got all this drama on the pitch, the title race, the race for those Champions League spots, the relegation battle, and then off the pitch, we've got these really serious issues still rearing their heads. So what does it all tell us about the state of Italian football right now? What do you think?
I think that's a great question to leave everyone with lots to ponder as we head into another exciting weekend of Serie A action.
You got it.
Until next time.